It's the reality of the world we live in. Europe has banned Russian oil, but India buys Russian oil, refines it into products like petroleum, diesel, etc., and then sells it to Europe. So Europeans directly consume the oil they banned through sanctions via the Indian route. Kepler, one of the most credible analytics firms in the world, reveals in its data that India has become the largest supplier of refined fuels to Europe, surpassing Saudi Arabia. Europe is set to increase its refined fuel imports from India to over 360,000 barrels a day. Now let's connect the dots. During the Ukraine war, Russia became a major supplier to India after it offered oil at discounted rates. Moreover, Russia was India's largest crude oil exporter by value, followed by Saudi Arabia and Iraq. And now Europeans want Indians to buy Russian oil, but at a discounted rate, as this will hurt Russian revenue, but at the same time it will ensure that global oil prices do not increase as the supply from Russia is still there. Moreover, based on what everyone learned in high school about the link between supply and demand, if Russia refuses to supply India with oil while demand remains high, prices will skyrocket. But here, as I mentioned before in the video, the blame can't just go on India. Europe is buying that oil indirectly, and they are aware of the whole supply chain. Look at the headlines. It is very loud and clear, and if you try to read between the lines, Europe is in a very bad situation, because just look at this graph. European countries have a very high chance of going into recession, whereas India is at 0% risk. So Europeans cannot deny Indian oil. And when you have a recession right in front of your face, the sanctions are not your first priority. And here we can take up the example of Japan, as it clearly gave up on the sanctions and started importing Russian oil at a price cap of $60 per barrel. Europe typically imported an average of 154,000 barrels per day of diesel and jet fuel from India before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That increased to 200,000 barrels a day after the European Union banned Russian oil product imports, and now we are at 360,000 barrels a day. India's imports of Russian crude in March rose for the seventh straight month to end the fiscal year as the top supplier to India, displacing Iraq for the first time. Very recently, Joseph Borrell, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Policy, told the Financial Times that Brussels was aware that Indian refiners were buying large volumes of Russian crude oil before processing it into fuels for sale in Europe, saying for the first time the EU should act to stop it. The Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said in response, "Look at EU Council regulations. Russian crude is substantially transformed in the third country and not treated as Russian anymore." And he is spitting facts. Even sanctions on Iran and Venezuela has generally accepted that once crude is refined, it is no longer designated as being from the country the crude originated in. In this case, it's not Russian, it's Indian. Yet because of the high worldwide price of crude oil and processed products, Indian oil companies were printing wild money. This is why the Indian government had to impose a tariff to discourage exports, all while saving oil for the local market. At the same time, the Indian rupee has been devaluing against the US dollar, and India just cannot afford to say no to this golden opportunity presented by Russia of discounted oil. But are you aware of the other countries that are also doing the same thing as India? This group is called laundromat countries, and it includes China, India, Turkey, the UAE, and Singapore. It sold 14.8 million tons of oil products to Europe, while UAE, China, and Singapore sold 14.2 million tons, 7.5 million tons, and 7.1 million tons since the war started. Moreover, recently, Western world did not oppose Pakistan's oil deal with Russia. The new Kyrie report has highlighted that the Western countries have purchased about $42 billion worth of laundered Russian crude in the form of various oil products from nations that are friendly towards Russia. Earlier, it was thought that India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi was likely to come under pressure from G7 leaders at a summit in Japan, where tackling sanctions evasion will be a key discussion topic. But we have not seen this anywhere in the summit, as economics is a full circle, everything is interconnected, and Europe needs India. Making these videos takes a lot of time and research, and I want to separate myself from other YouTubers just based on the quality of my research, so please subscribe and watch my videos till the last second, and that will reward my hard work. Thank you.